session. Hi everyone, this is the third webinar from which I have started last month. That is May. So first I had a very prelim what is agile and things like that. Then I brought in Sunil Mundra for agile smells, and this time I am bringing Abhidip Chakravarti, who is a cloud and DevOps architect working with Mindtree. So he has an overall experience of about 12 plus years, and his journey started as a Java developer, like us, Java developers. And then he grew till architect level, and then during that time he started deploying a lot of Tomcat applications and things like that. So to do that, he also then moved to DevOps area. So he has experiences in implementing applications for small scale companies to big large scale application distributed level. So today he is sharing his journey on DevOps and his experiences in DevOps. Hi Abhidip. Let me unmute you too. Sorry. Yes. Now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Go ahead.
okay.
It's the stage is yours, and let's hear it from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Albert. Hello guys. Most of the talk which I'm going to have today is based on my practical experience working in a large scale application.
Abhidip, we are unable to hear you clearly.
Is it not audible?
Yes, now it is audible.
So it's about my experience, working in small applications which are like one Tomcat being deployed. Starting from that to situation where some 150 microservices being deployed and 300 Spark jobs being deployed in 4 environments, and things are moving here and there randomly. So so when I did all these kind of things, I realized few things which can be done better in the way we do DevOps. So basically, that is what I'm trying to share with you guys today, which I call it as data first DevOps. And I feel that this is more contextual and more humane way of doing DevOps than the way which we are generally doing in day-to-day life. I am not saying the way DevOps is being done in, say, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, because I have not seen them and I have no idea. They must be very efficient, smart, and intelligent. But what we have seen in my corporate experience, what we are doing, and generally whatever we are hiring for, I think we can do little better than that. So, having said that, if we okay, so I'll take a pause after 2 or 3 slides, and if we have any questions, you can keep shooting. And I guess Albert would keep it noted, and then we will have a discussion in the end. So I'll have enough 10-15 minutes in the end so that we can have a healthy discussion here.
Yes, you can always put it in the chat box. I'm looking at the chat box consistently. So any questions we can ask. That's not a problem. Yeah.
Okay. So now if we talk about the current state of DevOps, so the moment we say DevOps and we start thinking, we basically think of these general things, that it is about some automation, some Jenkins, some DevOps, some Azure DevOps, some Ansible, some CI/CD pipeline, some test automation to be done, some defect logging automation to be done, some quality check is to be done. Generally, we think about DevOps just like this in most of the cases. Assume 85%, I'm not saying 100. But 85% of the cases when we talk about DevOps, This is exactly what is running in our mind. Now, let's take a step back from whatever we know about DevOps. Let it be all right, let it be there, but let's take a step back and try to understand the how, what, and why of the DevOps. Okay, we can go in a very advanced topic of DevOps, doing this, doing that, but that is not what we are doing today. We will be trying to understand some very fundamental things about DevOps which we are missing in general implementations. Let's talk about how do we do DevOps. In most of the cases, when we look into DevOps, how do we do DevOps? These are the things how we are doing DevOps. We will have some kind of build, some kind of test automation, some kind of deployment automation, some kind of defect logging automation. And nowadays infrastructure as a code is a new thing, so some infrastructure as a code thing to be coming up and getting added into the pipeline. So these are the things we can say that this is how we are doing DevOps. But if we talk about what exactly we are trying to do in DevOps, we are trying to automate most of the things so that people spend less time. So we are trying to do automation of build and deployment, infrastructure creation, testing, name it. We are trying to automate it and attach it with our DevOps. That is what we are trying to do. Now let's take one more step back and understand why we are doing it. Okay. So we are doing it to improve speed, to improve the quality, and to cut the overhead. So we basically started from that, and most of the cases we forgot our main intent of the DevOps, that why we are doing DevOps. We are mostly focused on how we are doing DevOps. Our thought process, our books, our seminars, our blogs, our everything is based on how we do this, how to deploy Kubernetes in Raspberry Pi, how to deploy um, Spark jobs into AWS EMR, how to do this, via that into that platform. So it's all about how. We need to little bit focus back onto the why part, because from the why we are deriving further things. And if it is about improving speed, quality, and cutting the overhead, then these are not the only things which are important, or these are not the only things which we can do. We can do more than that. So we'll talk about that later. But for now, what I want you to carry from this particular slide permanently in your head whenever you think about DevOps is the why. Why are we doing DevOps? To improve the quality, to improve the speed, and to cut the overhead. This is the intent. This is what we need to think whenever we are thinking about DevOps. Okay.
So how many of you guys are agreeing to whatever is said?
Can I see how many people are agreeing?
Yeah, just put a thumbs up. You know how to put the thumbs up, right? Just put the thumbs up with you. I see 2, 3 yeses. Yes, we are getting more of yes.
Chandra Viswas raised hand.
Correct.
Okay, fine.
So some yes, new to DevOps. Okay, you'll get to know about it. Yeah. So till now, almost everyone has done yes. There, I don't see a no right now. Yeah.
Okay. So that is good that we are all on the same page from the thought perspective. So let's move ahead and see what do we have further. Okay. So if you look into today's CI/CD pipelines, don't take it by the technology. Okay. Nothing to do with technology. What I'm trying to depict here is that we take some input, we process it, and then we create some output. this is what we do in the DevOps. You talk about the CI pipeline, taking the code, building it, unit testing it, quality testing it, packaging it, storing it into some kind of store, like if it is Docker image, it goes into Docker Hub. If it is DLL files, it goes into Nugget. If it is a jar war kind of file, it goes into Artifactory.
Correct.
So there's a input process output kind of pattern we have in DevOps. If it is a build pipeline, we take the Docker image, put it into Kubernetes or OpenShift or wherever we want to put. If it is a WAR file, we put it into some Tomcat running somewhere, right? So we take an input, we do some processing, and we spit out the output. This is what we are doing. And if you look into this whole picture, this middle part where the processing is happening, there's a lot of things happening in this processing. But what we are doing is we are just processing and sending the output. But we are missing a major factor here. And that factor is the data. This guy is doing so many things and we never capture those things. And we lose the whole data. For example, if a build is happening, we know that it would be some Git repository, some branch, and somebody would be triggering that build at some point of time. And either the build will fail or pass. But this whole information is never recorded. It is gone. So if I need to look back, I will have to get into the Jenkins and look into the logs, what Jenkins is creating. But it is only for viewing purpose. We have no utilization of this data because we are not recording it. Jenkins is maintaining it. We can go and have a look. This is failed, this is passed, this guy triggered and all those things. But this is only for viewing purpose. No practical usage as such because we have not separately captured it. For any kind of utilization, we didn't. Okay. Now let me tell you an example and let's think that how are we going to do it. So for example, you are creating a build. You're doing a build out of a source code. Take any favorite language of yours. And let's come to a common ground that we are creating a Docker image and storing it. And then deploying the Docker image into dev environment, QA environment, UAT environment. Okay. In dev environment, people are developing whatsoever they want and deploying whatsoever they want. And if you know about Docker, the idea is you build once, package once, and deploy everywhere. So a Docker image which is created once can be deployed in dev environment, QA environment, or any environment, even in your laptop, in Raspberry Pi, or anywhere in the world, it can be deployed as far as it is a Docker image. Now, I have the liberty to deploy it anywhere. But somebody comes, see, this practically happened, okay? I'm not giving you a story. So our manager came and he told that, you know what, in QA and UAT, forget perf because in perf people keep doing experiments. But in QA and UAT, you need to ensure that whatever we are building from development branch, only that should go. Now, if you think, okay, this example has been given, the requirement is set that any build, any Docker image which has been created using development branch can only be deployed into QA or UAT, right? Now assume that you have written a build pipeline and you have written a deployment pipeline, two separate pipelines, because not every time you build you do a deployment, and not every time to deploy you need to build. You have created the build, you can deploy it in multiple places. So two different pipelines. You can link them, that is okay, but two different pipelines. So now I have created a Docker image which is created out of any branch. Okay, because in Git people will create their own feature branch and do the development and commit the code, create the build, test it in dev environment. So uh, multiple Docker images being created out of one repository, but different branches, and each Docker image is tagged. So every Docker image is some kind of tag, and by the tag we know that this is the tag. The tag is equal to version basically in Docker. So this is the version which is good to go, okay, or not good to go, right? So now the thing is, I have the Docker image ready, and my build pipeline is, if I write a build pipeline, what would I write? I would ask for the Docker image tag number, and I'll ask which environment to deploy, so that I can pull the Docker image and deploy in that environment. This is simple. There's no rocket science in this. But the problem is, the requirement given to me is the Docker image, if it is not built from the development branch, I should not be deploying it into QA environment. How will I do this? Because when I get the Docker image, I do not know from which branch it is built, and hence I cannot take a decision. Because when the build happened, it just took the branch, created the build, created the Docker image, and stored it into repository. But we do not know which tag number is created from which branch. We don't have this relationship maintained anywhere. What we are talking here is, in the build pipeline, whatever Jenkins did, we never stored it anywhere. If we had stored it, we could have told that from this repository, this branch, we did a build at this time, this build was triggered by this guy, and a Docker tag got created with the tag number this. If I had recorded this information somewhere in the build pipeline, I could have used this information that when somebody says that this is the tag number, go ahead and deploy in QA environment. I would have checked that tag number in my data store, whether this tag number belongs to the development branch or not. If not, then fail the deployment. If yes, then only let the deployment happen. But we could have done it only if we had the data. But we do not have the data in most of the cases. Hence, we cannot implement such kind of things. This is one scenario. Now, what I want to know is, could you understand the scenario, or there's some confusion?
Just raise hands so that we can see. One. Okay. Okay. Some raised. Yeah. Some has said yes. Okay. Looks like many people raised hands, and some replied as yes also. Yeah.
Okay, so if you have any question, you can put it into the chat and Albert will let me know. But I am assuming you understood here that as we didn't record the data, we could not implement a particular feature, right? So it is all because we are not capturing the context, we are not capturing the data. Okay.
So
now let's
Abhidip, I have just a question. So how are they doing it as on today? Such kind of requirements without having that data?
See, I have no idea how people can do this. Probably the thing is, you will have to manually check.
Okay.
That you will have to look into the Jenkins log, searching for that particular Docker tag got created under which build.
Okay.
And when you find that particular build, you will have to look into the logs again, same logs, finding out that which branch was used to do the build.
So that means there is some sort of manual intervention.
Fully manual intervention, and it is tedious. So this, see, you can understand. I need to look for the tag number into, say, tens of Jenkins build. I'll
Okay.
have to open the logs of every build, and I'll have to search Control F and search for that tag number.
Okay. So
Right?
yeah, yeah.
You can imagine how tedious this work is.
It would be, and also there is it is error prone also.
Yes. And on top of it, if you have a team strength of say 200, 300 developers,
Mhm.
then your life is ended with this search and find operation,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so in that case, it is useful that you maintain the data so that you don't need to search here and there.
Okay.
You can
So
probably just run a query and you get the answer.
Sanjay is telling that we can use the timestamp of the dev code.
Okay, the timestamp. Yeah, so let's talk about the time. Very good input. Let's talk about the timestamp.
Yeah.
So let's get into the Docker Hub registry
Mhm.
and find out that at what timestamp this Docker image was pushed.
Okay.
Now assume I got the timestamp which is 3 days back.
Mhm.
Okay. Now I get into the Jenkins and look for the build which happened 3 days back
Mhm.
while I have 200 developers building every day.
Okay.
Okay. Now
Okay.
probably my Jenkins is configured in such a way that it says that after 100 build, discard the data.
Okay.
So most probably I will not find out that information. If the discard configuration is not done, discard configuration is done to reduce the disk
Load.
space usage
Correct.
so that Jenkins can keep cleaning itself. But
Optimal
let's
usage.
assume
Optimal.
we are using infinite hard disk and we have all the information.
Mm.
So now the thing is I need to look into the Jenkins log 3 days back for the same timestamp manually,
Okay.
find out that log
Mm.
and open that log, which takes 2 to 3 clicks, and then I find out which branch it is. It
Okay.
is better than the previous approach, which I told,
Mm.
but it is still a lot of manual work.
Okay. So, Nimisha, I think you are having some questions. Please put it on chat. I will ask Abhijit on that. Not a problem. Can put it to everyone so that everyone can see that. Yeah, go ahead, Abhijit.
Okay. So now let's talk about how do we think data first develops. There are three parts of it. First part is the data, second part is the code, and third part is the smart pipelines.
Okay.
What is data? The data which I just told that you missed it, you didn't record. At the time of the build, if you had recorded that this repository, this branch was built by this person and this Docker tag got created, if
Mm.
I have recorded this data somewhere, I could have used it for further usage.
Okay.
But we didn't record. So the data is one part. Now the thing is, next part is the code. Now, when it comes to the deployment pipeline, you now need to know that if somebody says that deploy the Docker tag 123, I need a
Mhm.
mechanism to find out whether 123 was built via the development branch. Even
Okay.
if I have the data, I need a way to do it. And this is only possible when you have the capability of coding. A configuration will never give you this. You will have to have the power of coding. So nowadays, in most of the cases,
Mhm.
all the CI and CD pipelines are turning itself into configuration as a code. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So Jenkins used to be configured, say, 2 years back or 3 years back. We
Right.
used to configure Jenkins. Now we code the Jenkins. So there are Jenkins files which are written in Groovy DSL, and
Mm.
we write the code there. And as far as we have the power of writing code, we can query anything, we can fetch anything, we can write anything, we can log anything, we can do anything.
Right.
So, and if it is not only about Jenkins,
Mm.
even GitHub Actions is codable,
Mm.
Bitbucket pipelines are codable. So all these things are turning itself into code. No
Okay.
more configuration, mostly code.
Okay.
A few versions are there where you give the YAML and all, but coding is one thing which is taking the space. And
Okay.
Jenkins came around 3 years back about configuration as a code concept. So,
Yeah. Yes, I do see in my organization DevOps. There are people who are into DevOps who actually say, "I write a Groovy code," and this. Yes, these
yeah,
days most of them are writing the code for Jenkins. So I have one question from Nimisha. That is, how do I address DevOps for database change, especially DDL, DML, any tools that are used at the enterprise level at this point?
okay. So this talk is not about that, but to answer you, you can look into something called FlyWayDB and Liquibase.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
FlyWayDB and Liquibase.
Okay.
Okay. So we talked about we have the data. Now we have a way to access the data, which should be the coding.
Okay.
And then comes the smart pipe. Now
Hmm.
you need to write your pipelines in a way. Write again means you need to code your pipelines in a way that your final outcome is not as per the pipeline, it is as per the data. If
Right.
the data says that this thing is allowed, it should go via that. Okay, so the overall pipeline should be smart, but there's a different term I use, which I say that it is smart data and dump pipeline, right? So that data has everything, pipeline is just executing. It does not take any decision on its own. It depends on the data to take all the decisions. So data is the key of the story.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. So let's take another scenario. And this time I'm throwing the scenario to you to have at least 2 minutes of thought on this scenario.
Okay.
So what happens? Assume this case, okay, that we had to start development and we started development. We created 2, 3, 4, 5 Git repository for various microservices and blah blah blah. And people started coding. At that point of time, because of any given reason, we didn't thought of we didn't think of checking how is the quality of the code. Okay, we
Hmm.
didn't bother about it because we have to deliver. The timeline is important. Client will kill me, kind of
Correct.
situation, right? We didn't think about the quality, but suddenly client started talking about quality. So
That
now
was
you
the reason.
decided that whatever new development, the new repositories which we will create in microservice world, how it happens is each microservice is generally a new repository.
Hmm.
So further new repositories which are going to get created, the management takes a decision that for all new repository, we will implement SonarQube quality gate. Okay. But
Okay.
for the previous, we will not, because if I on uh, after 3 months, if I enable quality gate for the code which has been written for last 3 months, suddenly the numbers of code quality discrepancies will be in thousands,
Right.
and developers will not be able to solve them, and they will not be able to deliver what is there in the sprint, right? So the
Right.
idea is don't touch the old code, but for the new repositories, there should be quality gate.
Okay.
Now, imagine this situation. You have one build pipeline, which is building all your repositories, but it now needs to be selective. That if repository A comes, don't do the quality gate analysis. But if repository J comes, do the quality analysis. How will it get to know? Where will this smartness will come? That I need to the pipeline need to understand for what I need to do the quality analysis and for what I should not do. How will I get to know that?
Yeah.
What can I do in my current Jenkins pipeline? We can do nothing. There's no way you can achieve it until unless you manage a relationship with a repository and its quality gate analysis situation. For A, it is false. For B, it is false. For I, it is false. But from J, it is true. And when it comes to do the quality gate analysis, I use my coding to talk to that data and get to know whether it is true or false, and accordingly I proceed. But you can do this only if you have the data and the coding powered together. Else you cannot. There's no possible way you can do it. What you will have to do is basically you will have to create another pipeline for those people and write a new pipeline with new conditions and things like that, if you are not using the power of data and coding. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is how you can, so this is all context, right? That what these are the information. This is the context of the story, that because of some reason I cannot do a quality test for given repositories. This is a contextual data, but we do not store it. We hard code it into our pipelines. We don't convert the context into data. We don't do this. And because we don't do this, we need to re-implement things, change things, and modify things or recreate things according to the new change. But if we, instead of that, if we have a data-based approach, I'm not saying that I don't need to change it, because the day management comes and says that I need this kind of thing, I need to think about the approach that, okay, so here I need a data check. So I'll have to first create the data, write a new code in my pipeline. These are the changes. But these changes are far smarter changes than writing a new pipeline.
It looks like a little bit of bandwidth issues.
For a specific set of repositories. And then telling the team that if you are building these things, use this. Not audible? Or
No, now it is. Now it is perfect. Now it is perfect.
Yeah. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So if I do it on the data-based approach, I can make it flexible forever, not for this condition, for the next condition, because we evolved our pipeline like that. We keep getting, requirements one by one, and we could only do it because we maintained everything in terms of data. And whenever somebody comes and say that I want this weird requirement, we say yes, we can do this, and we could only do this because we have the data. The another incident which happened is somebody deployed something shitty in some environment, and the whole test case started failing. Client started shouting, and the question is, what happened? The thing is, what exactly happened is somebody deployed a version which was not supposed to be deployed, which didn't have the merge happen properly, but finding it out was very difficult. But as we have recorded everything and as we had all the dashboards in place, we could exactly point out that this deployment in this environment has been done using the source code of this repository, this branch, this commit ID.
Okay.
And that guy can pull the code from that commit ID and see what is the problem. He does not need to track the whole history. I'm giving him the exact point that this code is deployed in that environment because I have recorded everything. And when he looks into the code, he finds that the merges didn't happen. And hence, this is the problem. So the whole investigation was like shortened by 50 times. He didn't have to look into the logs, what is failing, what is not failing. He didn't have to guess what code is there and what is happening. All those things, I gave him one-shot information that this is the commit ID, you look into the source code. He took the commit ID, took the source code, found the problem. One-shot solution. It could only happen only because we have recorded everything.
Can you tell again? Can you tell again?
That this
Abhijit, we just lost you in translation. Looks like the bandwidth.
Yeah. So as we have recorded all the things, the build, the deployment, everything we have recorded in the data, I have decent bandwidth. But am I not audible here?
Now it is
Hello?
better. Now it is better.
Hello.
Now it is better.
Am I not audible? I don't know why it is fluctuating. Yeah. So the thing is, as we have recorded everything in our system, tracking back was very easy. And if you look into this, tracking back was very easy. We are talking about, we saved a lot of time, which is one of the main intent of DevOps. To increase the speed, basically. How can you increase the speed? To save time. So we could save time in this way also. So it is not only saving time by doing automation. There can be 100 ways of saving time. And we need to look into those 100 ways of saving time or improving quality or cut the overhead. We can say that we have cut the overhead because now that lead didn't have to dig a lot to find out the problem. We gave him the shortcut to find out the problem, right?
Yeah.
So if I talk about the principles of data first DevOps, that's simple. First, we need to have a context visualization. That what exactly is happening? That if I'm doing a build, what is possible in that context? Who is building? What is being built? When it is being built? What it is creating? Where is it storing? Which repository, branch, commit ID, everything about that particular build is the context of that build. We need to visualize that context. Then we need to think about the data, store it in the data format, right? And once we have the data, then we can think of what can be next. But once we have the data, we need to think about various other things that our data can not only be the data I talked about. I am talking about some small factors. The data can be of various types. Data can be a file. A data can be the simple data which I talked about. Data can be some kind of logs, right? So there can be any kind of data which needs to be stored and maintained. And for that, you might need polyglot databases. Like something you can probably put into RDBMS, something you can probably put into GitHub, something you might probably put into some kind of S3 location, depending upon what we are doing. So huge unit test logs when they got created. It is not meaningful to keep it in RDB S3 bucket.
Okay.
Yeah, Albert.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So now the next thing which I talk about is the data cohesion. Data cohesion and polyglot database is very much correlated. What I am saying is the relevant data you put into a relevant data store. Don't try to put everything in one data store and don't try to mix and match data. You need to be very careful about what kind of data you are storing in which kind of data store. And you need to be very cohesive about it, very careful that you don't mess up data here and there. If you start writing some data into a files which could be written instead of writing it into a file, but something which is to be written into a file, if you start putting it into a database and then reading it from the database, putting it into a file and then processing it, this is not a good idea. So another example which I'm talking about is if you know about it, there's something called GitOps, which is basically file-based operation. Okay, so if you try to do GitOps using data approach, you still can have the context and store the context. But if you start using, if you start storing those file information into an S3 or into a database or into an MQ, it will not make sense. It will spoil the story. So we need to be very careful which data we store where. And once we talk about data, the stability is very important because the whole system, when depends on the data, you need to ensure the data is stable. It should not. There's another factor which is safety, but there's a stability because let me give you an example. For example, I'm creating the Docker tags, right?
Yeah.
And I am creating the Docker tags. How do I number them? I decided that what I will do is I will take the Jenkins build number, and very good, you can do this, is the easiest thing. But imagine a situation the day your Jenkins collapsed because of any given reason, and you need to pick up or build up a new Jenkins instance. Though your pipelines are saved because it is all files, but the moment you create a new Jenkins, the build number will restart from 1, and probably you have reached 5,000, and you already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, everything. And again, if it starts from 1, there will be data confusion. There's already a 1, and we are creating one more new one, and we don't know which one is the actual one and which one is the duplicate one, right? So we need to have the stability of these kind of situations. So a better approach can be we maintain some kind of counter somewhere which is independent of the build system, and we take the counter number from that system. So in short, you can probably create uh, ID in a table and take that ID, and it will keep increasing. It will never revert, so the number will never be repeated.
Okay.
Even if your Jenkins collapses, if you bring up a new Jenkins, you will get a new number from the RDBMS table, right? So
Yeah.
that way you need to think about the data, what you are using should be stable in cases of bad scenarios. So we need to be a little bit careful about that. Then comes your data safety. Obviously, if everything in the data, you need to keep taking backups of your data so that anytime your data store collapses, if you have more than one data store, if any point of time your data store collapses, you can bring it back as soon as possible. So backups and recovery should be in place. And is the smart data and the dumb data. And if I find this is equal to this is equal to that, I will do this, else I'll do it. Right? You can move everything on the data side, and you can use pipeline just as an if else if else if else if. That's it. And
So,
let the
Abhijit,
whole pipeline flow happens depending upon what.
oh, guys, looks like Abhijit just got disconnected. Let me give a couple of
And
minutes.
reconnected, I guess.
I think so. Yes. Give me a
Something
minute.
is wrong with my internet in that case.
Yes. Like after that fifth principle, like data safety and smart data dump pipeline, the bandwidth was very bad. It's fine now. So what if I understand the principle, the data safety is mainly about the safety of the data, how we are storing,
Okay,
where we are
so
storing.
the smart data dump pipeline says that
Yes, go ahead. Abhijit, I think we have
yeah,
bandwidth.
yeah.
We are not able to hear you right now.
Am I live now?
Yes, you are live.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So I was telling that if we have the pipeline behave as per the data, we have the flexibility. If
No. Um,
Okay. So am I up?
yes, you are here.
Something is wrong. I don't know. I'm very sorry for this experience.
It's fine right now. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So instead of writing hard-coded pipelines, if we write the pipelines which runs as per the data, that is what is smart data and the dump pipeline. It will act as per the data you want to. So these are the basic principles when we look into it. Uh, this is just a concept at this point of time. Let's not talk about the further plans at this point of time, but
Okay, I have
let
a
me,
question here
yeah,
from Nizamuddin.
sure.
What is the workaround to get the previous data counter number in Jenkins when Jenkins get corrupted? That's the what is the workaround to get the data counter? That's what the question is.
Generally, it will start from beginning. You cannot configure it to start from the last number. But what you can do is that, if you are using the full number as your tag number, say 5,328, okay, but suddenly Jenkins collapsed and you start from one. So instead of using the whole number, you can probably prefix a suffix with it so that it does not become a duplicate. If you are
Okay,
using the number, so your first tag would be 1. This
right.
time when Jenkins start, change your pipeline accordingly and make it like T1, so that tag 1, right?
Okay.
So that it does not collapse,
So the
duplicate.
other strategy that you gave is also a good one. Keep a counter separately somewhere, irrespective of where the Jenkins is from, and take whenever the Jenkins need to take a number, it takes from that counter. That strategy you just told some time back.
Yeah, that is the solution, but this is the workaround.
Okay,
Jugaad.
okay, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So for now, as I'll tell you what exactly what another thing happened is like, uh, one fine day, our manager came and asked that, uh, the client is asking a view of what is deployed where, which version, in which environment, right?
Mhm.
Now, as we had the data, all we had to do is to create a table and fill all the data into that table and give a search facility using jQuery, and we were done. So we created that page, handed over that page to the client, and now they could search by environment, search by application, search by whatever they want, who deployed. All the columns are searchable in jQuery table. So we had all the data, so we gave it, and they started searching, and everything. Everybody was happy, and this got resolved within a day. And they were expecting something big will happen. If nothing big happened, we just had to create one web page, and the story was sorted. So now, is it part of DevOps? Yes, it is. The the intent of DevOps is to increase the speed, increase the quality, and cut the overhead.
Yeah.
So if I help my manager to know what is deployed where, it is the part of the story I'm playing where my responsibility is to take the code from the laptop to the production. It is not only taking the code, it is also about the stories around it. If if QA says that, in QA environment, none of the developers should have the access to deploy, but only we should be able to deploy. This is also a DevOps requirement. Has nothing to do with the pipeline. It is about the security, but still it is the part of the story, right? If somebody is looking for some information, so if your QA team is maintaining a tracker that this particular version is good for the promotion, how are they doing it? If you look into a real world, they would be probably maintaining an Excel sheet saying that this date this build came and this build is promotable or not promotable. Why can't you give them a system, because you have all the data, and they just go there and decide which is promotable and not promotable, and the day of promotion comes, there is a pipeline which does the promote, and it will identify whatever is promotable, it will promote. Nobody need to look into an Excel sheet, because everything is stored in form of data, and using the code I can access what is promotable, I can pick those items and I can deploy it into the next environment, right? So
Yeah.
this way we can help the teams to cut the clutters, and it is not only clutters for the QA team, it will become a clutter for you also if you are the part of DevOps team, and they come and throw an Excel sheet to you and tell that these are the 10 applications with these version numbers to be deployed in U8 environment, and now you need to sit, take one item from that list and one item you deploy. And if the project is big, like 400, 500 deployments in one environment, you using your DevOps pipeline will take 2 days to do the deployment, until unless you have everything automated in terms of data. If I know that out of 500 versions, these are the 120 versions which are supposed to go, which is marked somewhere in my data storage, and I say promote from QA to UAT, and my pipeline knows that I need to pick all the things which are promotable. For that, probably the promote tag is set to true, and I pick only those items and start deploying it one by one. So I need to probably do one click and sit instead of doing 150 deployments individually.
Or if you write it as part of the smart data dump pipeline to look for the tag promote, maybe that can take care
Yeah,
of it.
any implementation. I'm just throwing the idea of utilizing the data in the context of the story.
Okay.
Implementation depends on you. How do you implement? Right?
Okay. Okay.
You probably can pull the data from Jira also, because Jira gives you the API to access Jira. You
Correct.
can probably make a call to Jira and find out which is the version which is supposed to go, and use that. So I'm not talking about the implementation here, but I'm talking about if we utilize the data in the right way using the code,
Okay.
we can do things which is not generally possible in the normal scenario.
Okay. Okay. So yes, we started with where we are currently and what is data first DevOps thing and its principles. Where are we going next? Because we have about 7 minutes right now.
No, so I will close it. So this whole thing which I have talked about is giving you only one thing, which is extra, that we can take the context of the story, store it in terms of data, and then utilize it for the further operation.
Okay.
Right? This is the brief. If you want to look more into it, I'll tell about that, but now I'll close it quickly.
Okay.
So there are further plans on it. The idea is to create a platform which is under ideation and then open source this platform, which would need some development and testing collaborations. And then probably after that, we will release it, right? So all these details we will start publishing, and you can find it on something called dfd.how. This is the website name.
Okay.
We have not started publishing about the platform there yet. We have written all the concepts and ideas there, but the platform story is not yet into it. We will push it soon. But dfd.how is the thing where you can go and have a read and understand the concept in more details and things like that.
Okay.
There's a LinkedIn group also which you can join. The detail is available on the dfd.how. You can find out and join the LinkedIn group for the further discussions, and if you want to contribute into the open source development and things like that.
Perfect.
So at this point of time, I'll stop and open for all the questions we have.
Yes, I am unmuting everyone so we can start asking questions if there is any. Yeah.
So Abhideep, this is Neeraj. So I had a question. Abhideep, you able to hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yes,
so Abhideep, basically,
so basically,
who is talking? I guess you need to mute
just
everybody.
give me a minute. Yeah, I will mute everyone and then
आपको एक लिंक भेजती हूँ, आप एक बार ट्राई
Usha,
करें.
I think Usha is the person. Okay, I will open path only. Just give me a minute. I will unmute Parth.
No, this is
Yes,
Neeraj, I guess. No, it was Neeraj.
Oh, it's Neeraj. Okay. There's no Neeraj.
No, there should be Neeraj. He told his name is Neeraj.
Okay, can you raise the hand in the in your participant list so that I can unmute you?
Neeraj, is it you with the name Nimisha? No, right?
No,
Neeraj, can you hear me?
no, there's no Neeraj at this point. There's no name Neeraj. Okay, is there any other question? Just raise the hand. I will unmute you. Okay, there is a question. Okay, Nimisha is Neeraj. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
sorry.
ahead.
It was my it was logged in with my daughter's name. So sorry about that.
No
So
issues.
Abhidip, I had that question that see, I have like around 5 agile teams, around 100 developers, right? 60 developers to be appropriate, right? And then they work on a single code base. Okay, but as these are 5 different agile teams, they create their own branch, and they follow their own priority, right? So maybe after 2 sprints or 3 sprints, they release their code. Now, when it comes back, when the release is done, the code has to be merged and taken by the other agile teams, right? At this point, it is a manual process, because when we try for an automated code merge, it runs into conflicts and all, because the people work on the different like on the same it is a single monolithic application at this point of time.
Understandable. That's understandable. Any automated code
Right.
merge will not work. Yeah.
Right. So is there any way that it can be taken care of?
See, there can be strategies to make the situation better, but it cannot be removed 100%. See, the thing is now depends on what you are merging with what. If you are merging team A's work with the team B's work, then there will be a lot of conflict. If that is not the case, I don't know how you are doing, but the better approach, or I don't know what is your approach, but if I do it, I would do it like I'll create a main branch or a development branch, and from that branch, 5 teams will branch out, and they will do their development in their branch. And once it comes to merge, they will merge it back to the development branch. They will not merge it back to the other branches. They will merge it back to the development branch,
Correct.
and then they leave. The other team who needs to take the code of team 5 will have to pull the code from development. They will not pull the code from team 5's branch. They will pull it from the development, so that they get what is missing. Even in that, there's a huge possibility of conflict, because what if there's a file which has been changed by team 5 is also being changed by team 4?
Okay. But yeah, we are already doing that, whatever you just said. Okay, moving to the development branch and all. But I was just curious if there is any tool or anything that can be take care of it. Not at this point.
Tools will probably kill the developer's work by auto merging something in a wrong way.
Right.
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 So manual merge is the better option actually.
Okay. So the other question, I think you responded earlier. So we are speaking about the code and all, right? So other thing that we have is the DDL or DML or the stored procedures, right? That we handle. Now that is a complete manual process at this time, and I think you took a name of Liquibase. We were trying it out from a POC perspective, but it is a licensed one, and when we go to on an enterprise level, probably people definitely organization look for something that is free of cost, right?
Yeah, you look into FlyWay DB.
Okay, if you can ping in the group chat. Okay,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
can ping in the chat, yes.
I will put it into the chat.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I will connect with you offline with this.
Sure.
So any others who are having questions?
Thank you.
We can take another one question maybe. Let me know. Just put it in either put it in chat or put just raise a hand so that I can ask or I can unmute. Looks like there are no further questions about it.
Okay.
Ajay, hi Ajay. I will unmute you so that you can ask the question. Yeah.
Even yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Ajay, you can go ahead.
Hey, hi, Abhideep. This is Ajay. Thanks for the session. It was nice. I am very new to this DevOps technology, and basically I'm from BTech, but I am into Agile, more of Agile and Scrum Master side. But I am like in this lockdown, I have read couple of things and also got motivated to get back to technical side. So can you suggest what would be I think DevOps I can I pursue as a career?
Yeah, that's a very high paying job, man. Don't worry about that.
Okay, so with that, I would like to close today's session because it's time up and I don't want to hold you guys on a Friday night. Okay, and in another 2 weeks, I will come up with another session. So please do watch. And I'm trying to either choose an agile coaching session or a different topic of little technical aspect. So please watch my LinkedIn post or I will connect with you based on your consent that you have given. If you have given no consent, should not be contacting you later. I will not. This would be the last message from my side. Otherwise, I will be connecting with you for next sessions going further. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Thank you.